Guys, I'm sick again. With beaver fever! No, I think it's like bronchitis or something. So anyways, a few days ago I stumbled onto this article. Don't ask me how I wound up here because I legitimately could not tell you. The article is about ragdolls in video games. You know, like when you get hit by a car in GTA and flail around for a second? Those ragdolls. And I know what you're thinking. Somebody made a whole article about those things? That seems like a spectacular waste of time. Why would anyone write 2 whole pages about that? That's stupid. Well, guess what, buddy? I'm making a 15-minute video about it. You haven't even begun to see stupid. I'll make a video about anything. Now whose time is being wasted? It's still mine, mostly. But as stupid as this all might seem, this guy here isn't the only ragdoll fan on the internet. They're a weirdly endearing thing to think about, and people in the comments of this article seem to match this enthusiasm for the subject, saying things like, I love ragdoll effects so much, ragdoll effects can lead to many hilarious screenshots, that's for sure. Don't I know it, brother? And also, I don't see a benefit in video games. Perhaps it used to be fun and exciting for me, but now with such alternatives as online casinos and gambling, I no longer want to waste my time with video games. By the way, anyone can gamble, so visit tower. Okay, who is writing the... Charles Barkley. But all of this got me wondering, why do we love ragdolls so much? And yeah, I say we, I'm roping you into this, because honestly, I don't think these people are weird for caring about them. If you stop and think about it, there are actually some iconic ragdoll effects out there. Some of them have all but taken on their own life and become a staple of a game's online community, so why do we care about something so insignificant and silly? Well, I guess the most obvious point that needs to be made is that ragdolls are like the slapstick comedy of video games, the primal part of our brains that loves to watch things just fall down and break and wiggle in ways no living thing should be wiggling is catered to in movies, in skits, in home videos, and in video games. In fact, it's such a weirdly enjoyable concept that you can build an entire game around just a bunch of 3D models looking silly, like Goat Simulator. This is sort of a genre in and of itself, casual, funky physics games, everything from Happy Wheels to Bennett Foddy stuff, Party Animals, Gang Beasts, and Fall Guys, each one featuring a bunch of knobby-kneed little jelly beans or quintuple-jointed people that get smacked, trampled, and decked out constantly, waggling their arms and hoisting themselves back up after rolling around like a hot dog. These games have a lot more going on, obviously. Sometimes it's mastering the physics to achieve a major goal, or competing in challenges with either friends or strangers, but a good majority of the entertainment comes from how your characters move and react to impact. It's literally the backbone, or I guess lack of backbone, of some of the best party games out there. But it's also just as fun to mess around with in much more serious games. It's like this pure, untainted nugget of fun wherever you see it. Like in Halo, where you get shot into the 10th dimension whenever you die. In fact, the camera, which is usually in a first-person perspective, will zoom out to third person just to show you a clip of you getting flipped around like a pancake. In Red Dead 2, a game that I genuinely think might have permanently traumatized my younger brother with one of the most gripping, tragic tales ever put on disc, if you punch someone in the face, they collapse like a bag of sand. If you wrangle them with your lasso, they torpedo themselves into a lake. And in the almost always dark and dreary, occasionally epic and triumphant Souls series, you also get to moonwalk over corpses that cling to your feet. You can just toss them around like wet paper. It's I mean, you're essentially teabagging a computer. And this is something that genuinely became a staple of the Souls series. People actively talk about this, and these other games have dozens of posts and videos dedicated to the best ragdoll moments. There's just something about them that's always fun to see. Sometimes they actually take a lot more effort than you might think also, and how exactly you want to design a game's ragdoll is a genuine creative choice. I remember seeing a clip of Helldivers from a few months back where Greg Miller, famous gamer man, got slapped around a little bit after getting redeployed, and a Naughty Dog employee actually took the time to point out the game's incredible animation, in particular, the initial toppling effect, the fact that the model doesn't clip through the very uneven terrain, the cloth having a realistic reaction to all the movement, and the recovery animation being a seamless return to action. Now, chances are, under 1% of players would even notice that there's anything impressive going on here, and that 1% is probably still being generous. This is the kind of thing that would catch the attention of people in the industry and basically nobody else, but it is undoubtedly impressive when you take a deeper look at it. Not only does it point to how much time was spent developing contextual, realistic reactions to taking contact, but it also requires a mastery over the physics of the game engine, an engine that's, for the record, pretty damn outdated to the point of actually being altogether discontinued 6 years ago. Countless painstaking hours creating very accurate environmental and character hitboxes, and I can't even begin to explain how tough it must have been to get this little cape to move semi-accurately. Capes and and hair are like the most difficult things to simulate, which is why for so long all video game hair looked like a Lego piece and why it's still usually the wonkiest looking part of most games. Point is, falling down in Helldivers is over the top but still very realistic, and you better believe that making all of this so realistic isn't just a matter of polish, it's also a creative choice. Because Helldivers is a goofy game, it never takes itself seriously, so there's a world where, like Goat Simulator, it shoots you way further than this when you get hit, where it really amps up the ridiculousness of your in-air body movements, and where you bounce off surfaces unnaturally, all in an attempt to play into how goofy this game is, and that would have been a different creative choice. But the other thing about Helldivers is that it has a very boots-to-the-ground gameplay loop. Every movement feels like a tactical maneuver, even when so much ridiculous stuff is happening around you. It's a game where small actions like effective strafing and proning at the right time are important to stay alive, and so it wants to reflect that groundedness even in its ragdoll effects. Falling should definitely still feel funny, and it does with your panicked little arm movements, but it's not out of control, and you feel like you're an actual person getting knocked around, not a giant balloon. And it's one of thousands of small choices in this game, and in others, that you don't really see as calculated, but they kind of are. But I mean, honestly, does any of this matter? Other than like games that are built around weird physics, obviously, does any of this really deserve analysis? Maybe it's like a fun thing to point out, but come on, I mean, if Helldivers didn't have highly detailed ragdoll effects, if Dark Souls didn't let you fling dead enemies around, if Halo didn't show what happened to your body when you died, would we be missing something? Would anyone notice? Better question, would anyone think less of these games or be less likely to buy them if they didn't have this? No, I mean, I don't see like a section in game reviews that covers the quality of the quirky physics. I don't really see anyone at GameStop asking an employee, hey, which of these games has the best ragdoll effects? Although in fairness, they're usually too busy asking GameStop employees for weed. It sort of doesn't matter. In the same way that a lot of details and small fun additions to a game don't matter that much. Let's broaden the topic at hand a little bit. I mean, from a financial standpoint, and even from a critical standpoint, a lot of what goes into making games can be seen as superfluous. Like, did you know that in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, some surfaces have these watermarks on them that make it seem like they were actually cleaned by a cloth? That is some crazy detail. Too bad the game's story felt half-finished though, because that's the thing that actually changes my opinion on this game. It failed in that major regard, and so I view it as a mediocre experience. And this detail is at best a fun fact that fires up a single part of my brain that goes, oh, that's kinda cool, and that's it. I mean, why even waste your time with stuff like this? No one's gonna notice or care, right? Couldn't you just cut out the time it takes to do all of this excessive work and put out a slightly more stripped down product that still hits the important deliverables, but takes less time to get out the door? If you look at these products pragmatically and you compare the effort it takes to do things like this to the effect it has on the perception or sales of a game, it's functionally pointless to do any of this, right? Let's look at another little detail, the workbench animations in The Last of Us 2. These are unbelievable. They look amazing, the level of polish is insane, and yes, people were drawn to that polish and praised it, but did stuff like this really swing the pendulum that much when it came to discussions around this game? Was the counter-argument to the backlash around the golf minigame, yeah, but look how fancy my gun is. And you can obviously argue that it's the sum of a ton of details like this that make the game better, and that's absolutely true, but I still think the average person doesn't really care about any of this. Think about how much time it took to make these. I can't put an exact number on it because I'm not in animation and I don't know how many iterations these went through, but I'm willing to bet it's one assload amount of time from one assload amount of people. And yet, if it was never even there, does the game go from like a 10 on IGN to a 9? Probably not. This game sold 10 million copies in 2 years. If these animations are never there, do Workbench animation fans everywhere show up to vote with their wallets and say, no, we will not support a game that doesn't have what we want, and then tank that number by a couple million? No. And at this point, it's pretty clear I've gone off the rails for this video, but let me try and rein things back in a little and get to the real point. As I learn more about how games are made and how much time goes into these little details, how much effort can secretly go into something as innocuous as a goddamn ragdoll effect as shown here, I really do wonder if these niche details matter outside of some silly discussions, articles, or videos about something the majority of people just won't care about. And I don't bring up the workbench animations from The Last of Us as a completely random example of another type of fun, well-liked detail in a game. The Last of Us 2's development was notoriously plagued with crunch. People were just working hours that they never should have. The whole company's philosophy had to change after this game came out, and they had to publicly address it. It was that bad. And perfecting the quality of stuff like this was undoubtedly a part of that. Now, I'm not saying that these animations from Helldivers, for example, or the surface texture in Deus Ex were also the product of bad working conditions. I have no idea what the working conditions were, but I'll tell you this much. This stuff took a long time, and 999 out of 1,000 times this kind of work would go completely unnoticed by the general public. When you're doing something like fighting to completely eradicate any environmental clipping during gameplay, you're doing so while in the back of your head knowing that if you did like a 10th as good of a job here, people would probably forgive you if the more important parts of the game are stellar. Hell, they probably won't even realize it's not top tier work. So again, I have to ask the question, why do we do this? Why are creatives so obsessed with making the silliest things perfect, and why are consumers so weirdly mesmerized by those silly things? Whether they're meant to make us laugh or just make us feel a little bit more invested in the game world. Well, I mean, maybe this is getting a bit weirdly philosophical for a video that started out talking about why it's fun to hit your friend in the face in Gang Beasts, but I guess it's human nature. We're attracted to effort and emotion and silliness, and even if not all of us are psychoanalyzing that feeling, we all have it. We like that some people just decided to make a game where you fly around in the most ludicrous way imaginable, and we like that it scratches that weird primal instinct in our brain. We like that people put this much time, effort, and love into something that wasn't guaranteed to be noticed, and so when we do notice it, we think, wow, I can't believe somebody took the time to do that. And when we do something creative, we like knowing that we put our all into that thing, even the simplest of details. We made it the way we wanted, we made a creative choice, and we worked to buff it out until it was perfect. Obviously, there should be limits and a hierarchy in place that stops people from burning out, but the presence of that desire to go above and beyond is one of the most important things in art. And so is sometimes the fact that things aren't totally intentional. You don't mean for it to catch on or become a fan favorite feature, and then it does, because you never know what people will connect with. I mean, this Helldivers clip, that's actually the thing that convinced me to buy the game, and it was the inspiration for this video. And yeah, I'm just one person. I still think in the grand scheme of things, these details don't tip the scales in any direction, but that's the whole point. I like that these details, these weird moments, they aren't about the numbers. Because we always talk about how corporate and tampered with so many games are, but you know damn well an empty suit didn't tell the Helldivers team to put this much time into details like this. This was all just genuinely from the heart, and that's great, and it weirdly spoke to me. This dude loves how different games handle ragdolls. He loves that he could send Nathan Hale to the moon with a well-placed grenade in Resistance, or how you can string people up against a wall with a crossbow in Half-Life. I love that a game like Red Dead, as serious as it often is, still embraces the silly side of video games and lets you play around with its stiff physics. These details are great because they don't matter, but then somehow, some way, for whatever reason, for whatever small group of people, they can matter. And a huge part of that is because you feel in these moments the people behind the game who put their heart and soul, or just their funny bone, into what they were making. To be honest, and I know this might come as a shock, this video was never meant to be just about ragdolls. It's more about our weird connection to the most random, throwaway, even outright silly things in entertainment. But the point I'm trying to make is it's worth talking about those silly things, the pointless things, the things that maybe like one dude worked on for 3 days in his basement that he thought would be buried under everything else from a project. Because whether we're talking about AI, or the push from companies to not actually let us own things, or carving out pieces of content to be each sold separately to improve profit margins, the industry is constantly trying to tell us that these things, the human things, the things that don't nudge the bottom line, don't matter, when in reality, they're the thing that matters most.